what you think about the issues of the world. What kind of spice you wanna be? Tell me where you wanna travel. Do you believe in luxury? What's your hidden passion? What makes you so unique? Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Happy Monday. It is Monday, July 13th, and it's what I call Man Up Monday. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, a talk show based here in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And this is my interactive live. Man Up Monday is an opportunity for you to have a conversation with me and my guests. So I invite you to do so. Before we get started with my guest and our topic for today, I want to kick off by asking you all to put in the city and state that you are tuning in from. If you will enter the city and state that you are tuning in from, so that we can know where you are. This is, again, an interactive live, so I encourage you to, as we move along throughout this evening, that you ask questions, enter comments, and we will try to get to them as best we can. So I see Chris Clark from Jacksonville. Greetings, my brother. Good to see you. Tarek and Dwelle out of the ATL, whose birthday happens to be today. Greetings, my brother. Happy birthday. Happy Earth Day. Good to see you. Shapiro Hardeman, Tallahassee. My homeboy, another homeboy. So Tarek is from Miami as well. So greetings. So it looks like the brethren are here tonight, which is great. All right, Tarek corrected me. Stone Mountain, Georgia. So yes, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. We got Ramira. Greetings from Tallahassee. So thank you for tuning in, sis. Hope you have a great evening with us tonight. So this is going to be spectacular. So these brothers who are with me tonight, one I have known for almost 30 years. Can you believe that? Almost 30 years. Great day. It's hard for me to even believe that. Actually, it probably has been around 30 now that I think about it, because our children, my son and his daughter, were actually born on the same day, same year. And they both are 28. So it's been a while. But at any rate, we are going to be talking with Dr. Dana Dennard. For those of you who are from FAMU family that have, taken some psychology classes on campus, then you over the past 30 years, then you definitely have engaged with Dr. D, but, also with Amin Raz, with Sakar Youth Institute, with the Internet Cafe that they had. I mean, just the Arquette Center, just everything. So I'm not going to, tell more about them. I'm going to let him tell you more about who he is. But Dr. Dennard and then Jay English, who I've had the great pleasure of meeting and doing some energy work with. And he is just a fabulous healer and just a wise man. So we are going to delve into Black men healing from systemic and interpersonal trauma. Black men healing from systemic and interpersonal trauma. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Dana Dennard and Jay English.
Hey. Hey. Greetings.
Yes. So, Dr. D, we're going to start with you. If you could just tell the folks who don't know you, who you are, what you do. And yes, I know.
What I do.
That's a loaded question. I know. Look,
That's a loaded question for sure.
Somebody put a Hawk Federation.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the Hawk brothers right there. That's why, because he knows. That's right. So let me compress this into a few lines because we got time to talk about some important things, and it's really not about me. First of all, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and so and I've been that way since 1987 or something like that, or 1990, somewhere in there. And so I've been practicing psychology here in Tallahassee uh, for that period of time as a licensed clinician and therapist. And my focus has always been on really developing community projects, community models, community methods to try to touch people on different levels and not to so much present what we would call psychology in the way that I was trained, because we know that in our communities, a lot of times people have the wrong idea about what psychology is. And there's somewhat of a stigma attached to it that if you go see a psychologist, that means you're crazy or something, and maybe you are. But since we know that just the idea, can be too intimidating, we try to find different ways to meet people where they are and to provide some type of inspiration, first of all, because I started out my journey recovering from drug use. So I always like to let people know, look, I started out recovering from drug use. I was a drug addict. So I'm not putting myself above anybody anytime, because I already know what it's like to be on any part of this continuum of devastation that we've experienced as Black folks in America, being a man myself, having to deal with life in America as a Black man. And so I like to let people know that, I have that background. I've had to climb out of that hole. So that gave me inspiration and especially belief in the possibilities of people, no matter where they are, to really admire and be almost awestruck by the power of the human spirit. And that's kind of like what I try to do wherever I go, even though I have this title, as a clinical psychologist. And I've been involved in, we had our public school, we had our own private school, excuse me. Yes, we had two different restaurants. The last one was Nefertari's. We had the Internet Cafe, as you said. Um, I did for 4 years. I ran a rites of passage program for adolescent Black males. That's what the Hawk Federation was about. And I've been doing a lot of different types of training with young people, especially college students, like that guy sitting right there, for example. And so I also am a yoga instructor. I'm very involved in creating different methods for people to understand human potential. And there are a lot of ways to approach that, a lot of ways to engage that, and men and women, and of any age. And so I'm also I was at FAMU. I started FAMU in 1987. Still teach classes as an adjunct faculty member at FAMU in the Department of Psychology. I've taught in the Department of Education at FAMU. I've taught in Black Studies over at Florida State, also the School of Social Work at Florida State. So also started my teaching experience actually at TCC, the first classes I taught. So I've taught at all three of these campuses in town. And so that put me in touch with a lot of different types of people from different walks of life. And I'm somewhat of an activist. I guess you could say I'm an activist, and that I think that ultimately that, we will get out of this hole because of the actions we take. And so as an activist, I try to encourage people to take action, knowing that we're already experiencing quite a bit of pain, and let that pain be motivation so that we actually take actions. So that's my thing. I was, at one point, I was the president of the association, the National Association of Black Psychologists, and the local president several times. So I'm involved in a lot of different things, and have been, and will continue to be, as long as I'm breathing, because I'm Kay's son, and Kay is my mama.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Kay, son. All right, Brother Jay.
Sure. So for me, I'm a professor of history. I teach at FAMU. I'm an artist. I'm a father, and I'm a spiritual teacher, energy healer, all of that. I started out teaching and learning meditation from Baba. We started in about 99, right? So I've been learning the path of how to understand human potential, how to awaken and help people, and that's really flowered for me. So at this point, I teach all around the world, right? I go to different places, I do retreats, I do online classes, I do personal sessions, and we go into every level, every layer, from how to live a more blissful life to how to work on shadow work, how to spend 3 days in the dark room, get buried. There's so many different ways in which, we explore sacred sexuality.
Get buried.
You see what I'm saying? Every layer of potential that we could explore, we go there, right? So I have plenty of ideas for how to advance and how to break up this kind of spell that we're in and get back to, as Bible would say, the reascension of the Black man's mind. All right, so I'll stop there and let's get started.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. So
I should have probably put in a shameless plug. Because I don't think I forget that I'm an artist too and a writer.
yeah.
But yeah, I did write a book about this very process, that what Black men must do in order to recover our sanity in an insane situation. So the reascension of the Black man's mind, coming forth by Ra, is the book that I wrote.
Yes. Okay. So let's delve in. We talking about systemic trauma, interpersonal trauma. So I think we need to start out with defining what that is.
Well, I think that we have a lot of dialogue in this culture about trauma, but I think that our understanding of what trauma is and how it really affects people is very limited. And I want to, speaking of a plug, I do want to recommend right away for anyone that's interested in this topic, a book that came out a few years ago. It's called The Body Knows the Score. And it's by a psychiatrist. His name is Van der Kolk. And it goes into the fact that we have really kind of not really understood trauma very well. And so there's a lot of dialogue about it. The main thing I want to emphasize about trauma is that it infers that a person is responding to an experience that in some way has very much disrupted their natural human functional capacity. That's the first thing, that the person has been disrupted and that the disruption continues over time. It's just not like an event and okay, they recover. No, they haven't recovered. So when we say trauma, we really mean that they haven't recovered. And the other part of that is, and what Van der Kolk is highlighting, it's not like he's the first one to do this, but he's like the most recent and has the best description of what's going on. And what's going on is that a person is a composite of many different modalities, capacities, and dimensions. And what trauma does is it disrupts the connection in the different parts of ourselves, especially the emotional life and the emotional experience that we're having from the intellectual and thoughtful aspect of our being, so that the mind and the emotions are at war with each other, and the person is what we call splitting or disconnected in a way, so that they don't notice that their emotions are really driving their behavior, and their thoughts are not noticing that their emotions are really driving their behavior. And what's worse is that the emotions are painful emotions, not just all emotions, but the painful emotions are driving the behavior. And the person is only partially aware of that. And therefore, their own human potential, what they're capable of doing, has been disrupted and almost like hijacked by the trauma, as if the trauma is now driving their car of life and taking them to all kind of crazy places. And then when they get there, what they do is they re-experience the trauma over and over and over again. And so this is kind of like the psychology of it. It's a very difficult situation. And we are involved, both of us, we're involved in techniques that are used really to deal with the part that people can't be aware of. That even generally in psychology, I took all those classes. I teach it. I can tell you, I know Western psychologists do not know what to do with trauma. They're just starting to really talk about it, and they definitely don't know what to do with us because our experience of it is a whole nother level. It really is. And so we're involved in trying to help people through energetic means rather than simply talk. We do talk, we do think, we do have recommendations, and at the end of this, we'll tell you, bro, do this, right? But at the same time, we also understand the power of synergy, that we as human beings thrive off of synergy, our interaction with each other. And when you bring the right type of interaction, it helps people to reconnect these disengaged parts of themselves so they can get back behind the wheel and run their lives in the way that they're thinking they really want to run their lives. That's the goal, that's the pattern. And it's difficult, but it can be done.
Okay. So that sounds a lot more like interpersonal in some regards. But tell me systemic. So, we've been hearing systemic so much lately and have been associating that with racism. So we've been hearing systemic racism that suggests that within these systems in America, education, healthcare, housing, employment, just all of these systems that we work in, there is this discrimination, bias, prejudice, racism that is taking place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when we say systemic, you mentioned some of it. I want people to think of institutions. Now, an institution is developed within any society in order to maintain rules of engagement so that those rules of engagement do not deteriorate, do not change. An institution is developed to make sure that there is a system in place so that the rules continue. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, an institution is developed to transfer from generation to generation to generation those rules. Mm-hmm. Number three, an institution is developed to ensure that that is maintained no matter what else happens. Now, if we go and look at those institutions, starting with family institution. Well, we are dealing with the fact that our family patterns have been disrupted for 400 years. And the disruption continues even when we try to recover. And there are times when we did better than other times. We can see that in history, right? Mm-hmm. And every time we kind of almost get it together, something comes along. So for where we are right now, the most powerful disruption for all of these institutions was probably during the 1950s, 1960s episode that ultimately ended up in what we're calling the period of integration, which I call the period of disintegration. Mm-hmm. Because what it did was it affected all these institutional relationships again, especially the family. From the family, which is the first institution of education as well. And I say education, I'm not talking about reading and writing. I'm talking about definition of who am I? Mm-hmm. What is a human being actually? Where do we get our definition from? We're treated institutionally as if we're not human beings, so we're definitely not getting the right definition from the institution, mm-hmm. which is America, right? And then within our own family systems, what has been handed down? What do our children get to know about who we are? And therefore, how they define themselves. Who am I? Right? And then we send them off to school. And mostly they go to school where they're now redefined again by an institution that has denigrated their reality as a human being, that is teaching them superiority and inferiority concepts, mm-hmm. that leaves them out of the dialogue for the most part, so that there's very little in that institutional situation where they could identify with, that they could incorporate and say, yeah, that's me. And then even more difficult for black males, especially, not just black males, but especially for black males.
Okay.
Most of the teachers are white females
Mm.
who themselves are afraid of black males. So it's a crazy situation. That's just the school system. I haven't even talked about other systems yet. I'm saying the beginning of this trauma. So this is all subconscious because a lot of these children, to them, it's just everyday life. It's not like they're sitting there questioning, am I being traumatized right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like even their parents are necessarily questioning, are my children being traumatized right now? People are not even aware of it. It's so subterranean. And yet this child is gradually, unconsciously learning things that is teaching the wrong idea about being a human being and that there's something wrong with me. And, I've gotten called to so many schools. At one point, I worked for a program in Florida State where we were just doing school-based problems with children.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were black children. I would go out into these different counties and I'd have these young black males, especially like around the age of 8, 9, and 10. And they'd be having problems in the school system. And I would get there and they would want me to come in and tell them what is wrong with this child. And I'd come in and a lot of times I ask them, like, man, why are you having problems? And he's like, they don't like me here.
Mm-hmm.
My teacher doesn't like me. Or my teacher won't call on me. Just little simple things like that that are traumatizing to a young little person, black, white, blue, or whatever, right? And when you get in there and you talk to them, and then you go talk to the teacher, and then sometimes I would just sit and observe. And you would actually see this. It reminds me of an incident that just really highlighted how deep it gets. I was actually recruited to do a training for teachers about dealing with black children. And I was talking about this issue with black males and how black male children behave, which is partially as a black male person, which has a certain type of energetic state to it
Mm-hmm.
that makes white females very uncomfortable. And then how this interaction, which is very subterranean, very subconscious, then begins to communicate to this child that you got a problem, buddy. And the child can't figure out what's happening, but they can sense it. That's why I said the body knows the score. The body can sense it, even if the mind doesn't notice, right? So I was talking about that, and I was explaining a behavior of a black male child, and the white female teacher said to me, "I don't believe that." That's what she said. Okay, and I asked her, "Well, why?" And then I asked her, I said, "Are you going to tell me right now that you, a white female with no black children, know more about how to raise a black male child than me, a black man with a black child?"
Mm.
And then she said, "No." But I mean, see the attitude, you see, the arrogance, the audacity, right? I tested a young black male with the little IQ test that they love so much. He scored in the superior range. He was in genius range. I went back, he was having problems in school. I went back and I showed the teacher his performance, his IQ scores, same thing. She said, "I don't believe that."
Wow.
That same black male child that was in the genius range in the 3rd grade, she failed that child. That child failed 3rd grade, had to repeat the 3rd grade. If you can imagine how crazy that is. Later on, that same child was in my Hawk Federation program. And one day, he was now 15. And one day we were driving down the street. I went to pick him up, bring him to the program. And we were just talking. I asked him, how's school? And he's like, "It's pretty good. How you doing? How your grades?" "I'm doing all right, blah, blah." And I asked him, I said, "Do you remember when we first met?" He said, no, he didn't remember. I said, you were in 3rd grade and you had a problem with Miss So-and-so. He didn't remember, right? He didn't remember it. And so I said to him, I said, would it surprise you to know that when I tested you in that year, that you scored in the genius range? And he got real quiet and he looked out the window and he just looked at me and says, "I find it hard to believe."
Wow.
That's the type of trauma I'm talking about. All that's happening subterranean. This kid he never had a chance. He never knew what hit him. He never knew what hit him. And that's happening to children every day out here in this system. And I'm just talking about the educational system. I haven't even brought up banking yet.
Right.
The biggest problem is financial institutions.
So what you are describing, I think, for those of us who have Black male children or had Black male children as small boys, would be, he's so energetic and that comes off as misbehaving and, getting in trouble, too talkative, or, what have you, and them not knowing what to do with that energy.
Right. Exactly. It's an cultural energetic issue. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to make that point so that folks who, have small Black boys that are in school right now, recognize, maybe they aren't, maybe they're siding more on what the teacher is saying and not really evaluating this a bit more deeper.
Absolutely.
To bring light to what it is that you are saying. Absolutely. So, I just want people to hear that. All right. So we had a question from John, and John, I think we're going to answer this kind of throughout, but his question is, what do you recommend to break the cycle of trauma in African-American men?
Yeah. So I think I was saying we're going to get to that. I think both of us been working on that for a long time, and we do have specific answers. And I don't know if you want me to go into that particular answer right now, if you want me to wait, but I do have very specific recommendations.
So let's move off. I just want to, bring it up, make sure it's out there, because, we got comments coming in.
I wrote a list to make sure that I don't miss you.
All right. I appreciate it. Jay, you want to chime in?
Yeah. I mean, I have a list too. So whenever you're ready, you're ready.
All right. Very good. All right. So Andre, for many, what we call trauma today, are you perceived as so normal?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, it becomes normalized.
Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna give you an example of how this plays out, right? So in one of my classes, I have this thing that I do called the no negativity bubble, right? Where I have young kids and they come into my class and I talk to them about what's called identity trauma, where, they're freshmen, they're new to college, they get into a Black history class, they're not sure what to expect. And my first assignment is I want you to situate your life in which you experience no negativity about Black people for 1 week. No negative music, no negative social media, no negative thought inside your own damn head about Black people. Nothing. Not from your friends, not from your family, right? Now, immediately, I get resistance. Like, I don't know if I could do that. You start, they just start itching like I might have to say nigga in the middle of the night. You know how Black people. So my thing about this is that, I'm just saying. So we have an addiction, right, to negativity, right? And we have to, I show them this stuff about like the doll test, and you'll see this where Black children a lot of times are preferring white standards of beauty, thinking of themselves as dumb or ignorant or criminalized, or all these different things that are part of the matrix. The matrix is sending a certain signal to us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't do anything about it, that signal is already in us. It's in the white police officer that's pulling you over, and it will be in your child unless you do something about it. Right? So you have to create a space, first of all, within yourself to be able to clear that energy. So I just say, just for 1 week. I mean, we need more than a week, but just for 1 week, just clear it, right? And you just see what they go through. Some of them are like, man, I'm just sorry, in the middle of the night, I just had to do it. Or I asked my friend not to call me a nigga, and they wasn't my friend no more. They said, make it out of here, right?
Wow.
This is the trauma. What I'm saying is that because the normalization part is that we think it is normal to disrespect ourselves, disrespect each other, to look at Blackness, Africanity as negative. That's how the world views us, but we view ourselves as, I am the savage. You know what I'm saying? Like, we embrace it, right? Mm-hmm. That and first thing is understanding that it's trauma, not that it's normal, and then creating steps to see that, work through it, manage that, heal that, and then the other part of the assignment is creating positivity intentionally that week, right? So listening to positive music, surrounding yourself with positive people, thinking positive thoughts inside of yourself, right? Which is the reversing of the process. And that takes time, right? But that's just a small sort of laboratory experiment of the grander scheme of the American problem. So,
Wow. Very interesting. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. So I think that what you just described speaks to the interpersonal piece of this in terms of how we internalize this and perpetuate it towards one another. All right.
absolutely.
So within with our friends, with our family members, we have made it endearing. In fact, so now.
But we haven't. That's the thing that I want when you said systemic.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of reminds me of I was in college classroom and a young man, I was talking about gangbang. I had been living in LA when it was really, really wild out there, and I had come back in 1990. And the young man, I said, things have calmed a little in LA since from the time I was out there initially. And he looks around and he says, no, things are still, they're still gangbanging in LA. I said, oh yeah, they are, but it's not nearly how it was earlier during the heyday of the crack period. And he said, well, you can't stop gangbanging because that's our culture. And I had to stop him and say, oh no, that's not our culture. That's the thing, that you have embraced that, but that's not our culture, not gangbanging. See, so we will embrace the environmental experience energetically first and then intellectually second, and then it becomes a subconscious program that continues. And the people that study advertisement and psychology, they understand this. They understand this. So if we could take, for example, following Jay's recommendation of positivity, right? So like I could give people, like the young people especially, just music alone. Like, what is the energetic nature of what you're calling music right now? Not whether you like it or not. I'm not talking about that. Maybe you like something and maybe you should be liking something else. So I'm not talking about that part. I'm talking about the energetic spirit behind the music. So if we go back to, say, mid 1960s to late 1960s, we'll see the energetic spirit of the music is, we're not taking this no more, and we about to do something about this. And from that energetic spirit, actually, that quote hip hop was born in the 80s, 70s into the 80s, right? So when hip hop started out, even the term hip hop means to become hip, which means be politically aware. And the hop means to be inspired, to actually take action, right? And that's what the word hip hop really means. And so that was the cultural vibe of what hip hop was and what hip hop is. Now, what happened to that cultural vibe? White execs bought up different groups, created a whole new genre. Next thing you know, they came out with something called gangster. Again, gangster is not our culture. And gangster is not hip hop. I don't care, just because it has the outer presentation, the way that you speak, the way that you move, maybe how you dress, but that's not what hip hop is. Hip hop is a cultural thing. It has a cultural purpose, a cultural intent. What happened to the cultural intent? So now we're talking about, can you just make it personal? Like, is anything really just personal? No, it's always interpersonal, because we are an interpersonal people. And that's why I said it starts out at the young age, interpersonally, with the school system. And sometimes it starts out interpersonally with the disruption in the family system, right? And so then we're talking about interpersonal at home. And then we're talking about intergenerational transfer of interpersonal style and trauma. We already know this is what, again, back to the book, The Body Knows the Score.
Okay.
We'll see in generations 3 generations a certain type of psychological issue. It could be alcoholism. It could be even. It can even be one of the things we don't talk about is molestation and sexual predators within the family system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can look at that and see where it's happening. And then when we ask questions, we see that this is the 3rd generation of that within that. So that's why I say when you say, in other words, it's absorbed personally, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and I carry it forth personally, yes. But now it's not just personal because there's interpersonal and then there's cultural that's behind all of it. And that's what we try to help people understand, that you're not just you in the middle of your life being you. You are you in the middle of a stream of processes, time and space, right? And that you are inextricably connected to your family. I don't care. Even like with me, my dad wasn't around. My mom used to look at me when my dad wasn't around. She said, "You walk like your dad." Used to piss me off. Because then why you even bring him up? I don't know him.
Right.
And I walk like him. How am I supposed to know how to walk? You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of clowning, but I'm dead serious, right?
Right.
So I'm saying we must understand that we are multidimensional. That's my point. And that this trauma flows through us from all kinds of places. So there's the institutional stuff, there's just the family stuff. Yes, and don't forget the power of the media. That's why I brought up hip hop. How is it that we as a people, not a person, not me personally, we as a people have allowed white executives to push a constant diet of nonsense? And I'm not even going to use some of the words that are very popular out here in the world, that I'll smoke you or I'll choke you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And people are and it's like blasting all out of the car and everything. And I asked, I'm not going to mention no names. I asked one of my councilmen. I said, hey, don't we have like an ordinance or something that you can't just blast any old thing out at 4:00 in the morning? And the councilman told me, well, we're working and we don't have an ordinance. Right? I'm like, you don't have an ordinance. I'm like, well, I know darn well this will not be allowed in certain areas of Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
Ordinance or not. See, so then that's the institutional agreement that the Black people can be terrorized, whether it be through their own personal struggle, whether it be through the police, whether it be through their friends or their foes or whoever. That this is a very, very complex, intermixed situation. And yes, it is upon us, starting with myself personally, yes, to begin to do things to correct this. But it's serious work.
Absolutely. So there's a comment I wanted to share. Andre said, as a therapist, my work begins with the Black parent and or significant adults with the trauma in their own lives before the child. They want us to fix the problem. I utilize mental stretching through the arts with kids. You know, so when you talked about the music, I know music can be a powerful tool for learning. You know, very interesting. John also said individuals intermingle hip hop with gangsta. Many of our culture don't relate to what hip hop is simply because they don't know. I just tested a 15-year-old and he failed.
Definitely, we don't know because if we're not culturally oriented, we wouldn't know.
So let me give you another experiment I do in my class, and this is kind of a wild experiment.
Okay.
But this is to teach people, because sometimes the intellectual part, like what Bob was talking about in the history, they can't receive it, they can't hear it because they're so far away from it, so they don't understand it. So one of the things I like to do is I like to ask my students to find the most ratchet, crazy song possible, and I want you. And I tell this to a male, find the most ratchet, crazy song that disrespects a woman. And I say this to a woman, go find the most ratchet, crazy song that disrespects a man. And I want y'all to get up in front of the class, stare in each other's eyes, hold each other's hands, and say this. Now, as soon as I say that, now the whole class, some of them get happy because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to get to be ignorant, right? But the rest of them kind of be like, hold on now, this is about to be crazy. Is this okay? I don't know about this, right? So So there's this split, and that's like the different parts inside of us, right? But then when they actually do it, there's a part of them that's almost like, is this okay? There's a part of them when I see inside them that's like crying. There's a part of them that's happy, and you start to see the trauma, right? Because the thing about it is they never have to say those words to anybody, right? As soon as they say it to anybody, right afterwards they're like, man, that was horrible. Please don't ever make me do anything like that again. In other words, they are aware that what is subterranean becomes clear, right? And so I don't have to say, I can say, it's bad for you to listen to that. It's having a certain effect on your spirit. Da, 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 da. Just say it to somebody while you're holding their hands and feel the energy of it, right? And they become clear. They're like, I don't know how I listen to this all the time. This is crazy, right? But I'm like, but that's what I was asking you in the first place. But, there's certain things and there's certain techniques that we use to break the spell, right? To wake people up to the point where they're like, okay, I got to change. This is unacceptable. And I've normalized something that actually is toxic, right? Where we can go and just with music, there's different types of music. In Black people's connection to music, and the reason why it's important is we use music to connect to God. Let's just be real. You know what I'm saying? From the very beginning, we play a certain drum rhythm, God just takes the hell over your body. You see what I'm saying? Right? Or, we could listen to gospel and it take you and uplift your spirit. It doesn't matter. We've been connected to music. But now, what's coming through the music now? What's connected to our spirit now? Right? So we have to look at how not just, music in terms of just okay, is this a certain genre of music or not? But music is a gateway, right? And what gateway are we using? What's entering into? I remember as a young person watching them play, certain songs in the party, and those songs agitating people to the point where they kill somebody. I'm like, yo, please don't play this song again, because it's going down every time they play this song. And there's a DMX song, and DMX has that certain energy, right? And these songs are gateways, right? And we have to acknowledge that. The young people don't understand that, right? They don't know the context. They're just used to one layer. But it's on us to educate them, and it's on us to provide different perspectives and different opportunities for them to plug into new gateways, right? So they can shift their awareness, understand the power of music, the power of themselves.
Awesome. Jay, I got a request that you come a little closer to your mic. Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right. So, wow. Yes, I think we will all agree that music is powerful. And, I think that we don't, some of us don't recognize the energy behind music and the effects that it has on us. Growing up in the church, I've often heard people talk about your ear gate and your eye gate and what you are consuming and the effects that those things have on you. We may not think it's such a big deal, but it does have an effect on us.
That gets us to diet. Diet for what? Diet for the body. Diet for the mind. Diet for our emotions. Diet for spirit. We're on a diet, whether we notice or not, and we're feeding ourselves, whether we notice it or not. And we're either feeding ourselves that which is life enhancing, or we're feeding ourselves trash, which is depleting us. And that's in all of those dimensions. That's true. And again, better understand the system, and those that are in charge and create these processes understand this very well. They understand us very well. They know how we work, and they know how to keep us right where we are. And they make sure that they do that. When I had my school, I would teach music to the children. And I was shocked to find out that the music that they preferred, so I teach them all types of music, every type of music, music appreciation and music theory. And I'm a musician myself, so I came from a family musician, so I had to learn that growing up, so I'm there. I was shocked to find out that when I would ask the children at the end of our class, I'd say, I'm playing, this is gonna be the last song for today. What do y'all want to hear? Now they've been exposed to all kinds of stuff, Michael Jackson and all this. The number one music they wanted to hear was jazz.
Really?
I know you wouldn't expect that. They wanted to hear jazz. And we have to ask the question, why is that the children want to hear jazz and the adults don't know nothing about jazz? And what is jazz actually as a musical venue for gateways? What is jazz? Let's go look at the jazz greats and see what they were on. Number one, perfection. Number one, they're all on perfection. The highest possible function you can be with this instrument, that's what they own. Number two, discipline, because without discipline, you don't get perfection. Number three, innovation. Jazz is innovation on the theme. What is the main thing that we as a people need, and especially men, are supposed to be involved in order to solve problems? Innovation. You see, when they took music out of the school, they also took out a system of education that actually develops the right brain. And the right brain is the side of the brain that takes all the stuff and puts it together with emotions so that it all makes sense, so that you can look at the bigger picture. That's right brain function. So when they started taking music and art out of the school, better recognize now somebody knew what they were doing.
True.
We cannot sit idly by, men and women, but we're talking about men tonight, the men. We cannot sit idly by and just allow these things to happen. We have to take charge and be innovative and active. The male principle in nature is activity and executive function. That's the male principle. We have to do that. What is the number one issue I find that makes that very, very difficult? And that is escapism. Escapism.
Please explain.
Males are too afraid to do what males must do in this hostile culture. So they engage in escapism. Probably number one escapism would be substance abuse. Substance abuse, spending time doing things that have nothing to do with progress, being so involved with women that they actually don't become men, and do and take actions, right? And avoid taking those steps that ultimately means I got the courage to live in spite of the hostility and the horrors. Courage. So they fit in. We fit in, and we let it go down.
So are you suggesting that escapism breeds a lack of courage?
Well, definitely escapism breeds a lack of courage, because it's sort of like falling off your bike. What's the first thing you do? You get back on and you ride, so that you gain courage that you can fall and you'll survive it. Right? If you fall off and then don't get back on, the longer you don't get back on, the more difficult it is, and the more you become a victim of it. Right? And so I always say one of the issues that is very, very obvious to me, having been a person that's been involved in business a lot, is that if you don't run anything for too long, then you don't know how to run anything. And so all of the different techniques and the psychology about sticking with it, getting more information, becoming competent, all those things, they just drop off, and you ultimately take the dependency role. You know that you got your own business, you got your own thing going on, Nicole. Look how you know how much, you know what it takes, right? And you have to have courage.
You do.
You have to be willing to take a risk.
You do.
Because your goal is bigger than your emotional reaction to it. But I'm saying traumatic experiences cause people to live so much in their emotions. Even if they have goals, the emotions overcome them, make it difficult for them to then go forward and take the actions.
Yeah.
So our cure then is activity.
Yeah, I want to speak to what you're saying, because one of the things that's unique about people who are traumatized that I noticed is that When it comes time for action is when you see the trauma come out. Because people know how to patch themselves together and look normal until it's time for them to do something that either doesn't have an existing structure or for them to do something that pushes them outside their comfort zone. Then the trauma shows up immediately, right? So basically, those people in certain ways are frozen, right? They're frozen in their past, they're frozen in their trauma, and sometimes they're conscious of it, sometimes they're not. But if you ask them to move forward in their life, that's when you'll know whether the trauma is there, right? If you say, listen, I really want you to start this business. I really want you to write this book. That's when the fear of being incompetent shows up. That's when the anxiety about what that teacher said to them when they were younger comes right back, right? And otherwise, you might think they're normal, right? And you might go, oh, this person's fine, and it's like, but why have you never changed your life? This should be so simple. And when you start to investigate, that's where the trauma is there, sort of like a guard dog, right? Of fear and anxiety and all of that. And in a way, you can look at it as like a shadow, right? That's keeping them in a certain place and keeping them from shining their light to the world, from being that, Black man that can change their life, improve their life, improve the world, etc. And we really have to look at this like it's one of the most important things in our life. Because if you don't tune into and fix your trauma, you're basically going to repeat unconsciously all the things not only that happen to you, but that are happening outside of you all around. Like we'll just be a product of our environment, right? And so many people want to help, but they think they could just help others. And you got to do the trauma work yourself. Are you going to basically just repeat whatever's inside of you to your child, whatever's inside of the way you were abused or ignored or neglected, all of that, right? So part of it is a self-love journey. Part of it is a journey of healing your identity, what it means to be a Black person, right? Part of it is you understanding what it means to be African, right? Part of it is you understanding what it means to have a spirit, have a soul, tap into the deeper layers of that, right? And then as a man, what is manhood? What are the different layers of manhood? One layer is you being a man of integrity, right? A man of accountability. The other layer is how does the warrior aspect of a man function in this society, right? How does the businessman aspect function in this society? A lot of times people think of manhood and there's a very narrow view. And they have one part of it together and neglect everything else. That's trauma, right? And that's a lot of times how it plays out, right? Where it's like, well, the men in my family, they just neglect all of these aspects of manhood. So I don't even think about that as being, right? And I'm being a man in their mind. They think I'm being a man. But then when it comes time for them to function, okay, well, people expect you to be able to do this, this, and this. That's when the trauma shows, right? So you'll see that every time, right? When it comes time for functionality, for action, as he's talking about the action piece, that's when trauma says, there ain't gonna be no functional action. That's not going.
Wow.
That's where the escapism comes in.
Right. That's when they start smoking and putting those gangster records. You know
For sure. So I got two comments that I want to acknowledge. John said role models are highly important. Learning manhood on the street is common in some families. At this point, a person may ask, quote, I got a kid now and I must cut my dreads to be a man.
Yeah, I that's one of the things on my list, the false concept of the role model. Right? And I think if we understand and remember a while back, not too far back, what we call the apprenticeship relationship. Right? So like, for example, there's a whole lot of talk about guns and that type of thing right now. First time I shot a gun, I was 8 years old. The gun I shot was my grandfather's rifle. My grandfather took me, who himself was a marksman in the service, took me out into the woods to show me how to shoot a rifle at a can, right? First, we're doing cans first, right? I learned all about guns, how to clean guns and how to shoot guns, and I had a lot of respect for guns. So my grandfather used to leave his guns, his pistol on the table all of my life growing up. All of us children around, nobody ever bought his gun because we always respected it. That one-on-one relationship with him, showing me, not just talking, not just being an image somewhere on TV or on Saturday for a few hours, but rather an ongoing relationship, an apprenticeship relationship. This is how you do it. Same thing with fishing, same thing with changing tires, all the stuff that you have to do to keep it going. My grandfather was the person that showed me this is how you do it. So when we talk about role model, oftentimes we have we have a superficial idea about role model, right? And the truth is that the black males do not have enough role models. And I don't mean just pictures. I mean actual men in their lives that can teach them men's ways. That can teach them, like Jay will tell you how I am about young men, even adult men, about females. Like, how do you learn what's going on with you and your female? Well, you don't learn that from another female.
Right.
And then if the man doesn't understand, how is he going to teach you that?
True.
Right. So I'm saying the apprenticeship relationship has been, that's where the so-called integration period, the disintegration of role models, people who actually would do an apprenticeship relationship with young boys. So a part of the answer then is some type of apprenticeship relationship. It can be in a group. That's why we did the Rites of Passage program. Again, when you do something like that, you see a lot of the problems, the traumas. Most of my boys didn't have males in their families that could be with them. And then a lot of times the women were overburdened. I mean, they were straight up overburdened to the point that sometimes they couldn't even get the boy there for us to do the role modeling. So role modeling is important as long as we are serious and have depth to it. Then yes. And if we don't do it, again, if we don't do it, the media becomes the role model. You go out into, and I've done it many times, you go out to the school system, the black males, you say, well, tell me, what are you thinking about doing when you grow up? You only get a couple of answers. An athlete is a football player, basketball player, or a rapper. That's about it.
Yeah.
But that's what's put out in front of them all the time. This is what black men do. They don't get to see this other stuff. We know of other black men, but it's not like a diet, back to diet. It's not a diet for them, right? It's like a fleeting thought. And we need it to be, bruh, this is how you do it. Just like, you teach them how to tie the shoes. Yeah, this is how you solve problems. That's the main thing.
The action
part, how to solve problems.
So let me share Ramira. She said a rise in escapism happened since slavery. You can see that literally through physical escape towards freedom within the era and even the Great Migration. The effect is creating generational trauma that we see today.
Well, sometimes that escapism was a smart move, though. A lot of times that was just the opposite of what I'm talking about. A lot of times escapism after slavery was taking an action to be more effective, right? And to get away from truly hostile, traumatic situations. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people escaping the action. Like those people were taking action. Okay, I'm going to uproot and I'm going all the way to whatever so that I can do what I got to do. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying what I'm seeing mostly is males who are escaping the type of definition of manhood that Jay was talking about before. How to actually be a man. How to present yourself as a man. Like all the talk about the saggy pants. It's crazy that we even have arguments about that in our culture now. We have arguments like, is it a problem or not, right? When in fact the presentation itself tells you, okay, when you were like 2 years old, walking around with your diaper, you kind of look like that, and now you're like 20 and you still look like you have a diaper on. And we can't look at that and see, oh my God, what are these men doing, right? We want to make it a fashion? No, it's psychological disturbance. Right? And so we've lost that criteria of roles, role modeling, definition of ourselves in our own image for our own interests. We've lost that, and that's what we have to get back. And that means that men, boys to men, all in between, have to actually take an active role. We have to be active, and it has to be action oriented. Like I literally have to do something.
Okay.
So cleaning up all the foolishness is the beginning of it. Cleaning up all the foolishness.
All right, so let's talk solutions. So cleaning up the foolishness. Jay has talked about accountability, responsibility, and what that looks like. All right. There's a warrior piece. There's a protection piece. There's a provision piece. There's a financial piece. Any other things we want to touch on?
This is a lot.
I know.
It is.
We're getting into the list now, so I'm just
let's get it. Let's get it. Because we had an hour. So let's get it.
I go through my list, and since y'all want to do lists, we're gonna go list. Okay. So I'll start out with healing identity trauma as the first thing, right? Meaning that we need to go through a reaffirmation process to redefine what it means to be Black in a healthy and clear manner. Which would be redefining our orientation to spirit, our orientation to the land, our orientation to food, all of that, our orientation to family, all of that. Then healing the attacks on our DNA. Our DNA has been under attack since we've been here. There are so many different ways in which that takes place in terms of us having greater health issues, us being treated differently when we go to the doctor, all of that. So we have to heal the attacks on our DNA. So that comes from taking control of your health, right? As Bob talked about in terms of diet, exercise, and then mind, body, spirit work, right? So there are many ways in which you can do mind, body, spirit work, but that is a part of the process because that's going to start to address some of that trauma that's hidden in different layers or different chakras or different meridians, right? Because part of it is not just in the body, right? So some of it is at different parts in different parts of your consciousness, right? And so I know
it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe.
It is, but it's okay.
But it's real.
Here's the thing about this. And as a person that does energy work, I can feel and see these sorts of things, and they're very clear. But when you try to articulate them, it becomes tricky because people don't understand necessarily what you're talking about, and that's part of the issue. So in other words, if you have an issue in your heart chakra, right, but you're trying to talk to a person and you're just like, I don't know, I just have trouble saying the word I love you. I don't understand that. I don't get it, right? And there's certain energy that's been there, that's been blocked for years. That's the work that needs to be done. And people may not understand how to do that, right? So part of that is understanding that mind, body, soul piece so that you can address the subtle layer. Okay. Healing the family, creating strong family units, picking mates that add to your purpose and bring qualities to your family that will be useful. Right?
Say that again. Say that again for the people in the back who didn't hear that.
Okay. Here we go. Creating strong family units and picking mates that would be useful and bring qualities to your family that are needed, right? And that's something that Black people don't focus on at all, right? So, we gotta pick the right people. That to me is one of the most important things, aside from your purpose, that you need to get right, right? In addition to that, we have to do the shadow work. We have to see the trauma. We have to go in there. We have to face our fears. We have to deal with our greed. We have to deal with our distractions. For a man, some of the main distractions: women, power, money. Right? They're going to distract you from your purpose. Right? Baba talked about that. Men being around women so much that they forget to be a man and all of that. So a man has to be clear. Those things are going to come as you're headed towards your purpose and your potential, but you got to stay focused on that and make that the priority, right? With your time and your energy. All right. Next, to me, everybody has to go on a journey of soul searching so they can be clear on what is their destiny, so they can be clear on what's their purpose here in life. You can do all this, but if you don't know where you're going, there's going to be no cumulative effect to your work. Next, creating circles of power where men can build together, where they can learn from each other, where they can be a support for each other. And if they do exist, join them once they do exist, right? So either creating them or joining them. Next, sitting at the feet of wise elders and absorbing their insights because you don't have to create the wheel from scratch. Now, sometimes there's not that many wise elders given in the Black community, but seek them, even if you have to travel, right? It's useful. It's worth our time. And then on the flip side, becoming a mentor if you are a person that has the ability to do that for younger people. That's a part of a man's work, is making sure that there's a succession, that there is not just you, but you are learning from those before you and that you are giving to those after. That's a key part. Okay. Next, learning to access all the different aspects of manhood. So I have a Awakening Divine Masculine class. And in that class, I break manhood down into 6 different parts. There's plenty of ways to do it. I'm not saying this is the only way, but I'll break it down to the priest aspect, the king aspect, the warrior aspect, the businessman, the leader, and the lover aspect, right? All of those need work, right? Any of those pieces falling apart, and you're going to have some serious issues in your life. As I said, some families already have certain parts cultivated. And you'll see that the family is like, well, your father had a bunch of women. He didn't do much else. But the lover is cultivated in that family. but manhood itself is not intact. Just one part is intact, right? And so making sure that you're dealing with all those parts. And also on the flip side, that when you pick a mate, make sure that they also have parts, right? So
Jay,
yes.
do me a favor. List those 6. One more again.
Sure. So the 6 are the priest, which means like the spiritual part of you, right? The king, right, which is like I consider king also a part of father, right? But the king, the father aspect of you, the warrior, the businessman, the leader, and the lover.
Okay, thank you.
Right? All of those. Also, become an expert or a master in as many fields as you can. Part of our issue as Black people is that when it comes time for us to really get down to, all right, I need to figure out how to do something, we go call a white person. How the hell you going to free yourself and really believe that you're going to change the world when you don't believe that you're an expert in shit? So you got to become an expert in as many fields as possible, right? Whether that means get a PhD, whether that means be innovative, new, bring something that we never seen before. But that's what we should be spending our time doing rather than escaping and chilling and shit, is becoming an expert, right? In as many fields as we can. Next step for me, create the world you want. There's so many Black people sitting around there complaining about the world. If I go on Facebook now, I can find 1,000 fucking groups of people complaining, shit like that. But they're not creating the world they want, right? If I ask them, show me the world you want and show me what you've done to create it, many of them don't even have one step.
Right.
So actively understanding your power of manifestation, understanding one part of it is that you're a co-creator. So spirit's going to create part of it with you, but you got to do your work. You got to manifest. You can't sit there and just complain. That is not manhood. That's just wasting your time and wasting our energy. Sure. Next step, learning to live a more blissful, more loving life. We have suffered enough. We spend so much of our time in pain. We spend so much of our time complaining. We spend so much of our time like just in a sour space. And to me, it's very important for us to, if we know how to navigate our inner world, make it as good as you can and transfer that to your children. Transfer that to your family. Make your life, in the time here as pleasant as possible so that we can be efficient, not just so that we can escape, right? So that we can be efficient. So that, a lot of times people don't, and you listen to Black people, I don't do it because I don't feel like it. Like that's the thing. I don't feel like it, right? Well, learn how to navigate your damn feelings then. Right? You see what I'm saying? Okay. So next thing, start your own business. There's really no way to me to get to sovereignty without you being able to have your own resources and your own power, which extends to buying land, creating intergenerational wealth, and raising children in the most healthy way possible. So that's my list.
Okay. Great list. Great list. All right, Doc. What you got?
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some very practical behaviors that will follow right what he just said. Okay. So I'm just going to list them. So the first thing is on the spiritual self. I highly recommend, and he knows that, I highly recommend taking our time every day to sit. Whether you call it meditation or whatever you call it. At least 10 minutes. Amazing things can happen if you just stop everything and sit for at least 10 minutes. Close your eyes and sit and be with yourself for 10 minutes. Now, we both teach formally meditation, and I got one that I can teach in a few minutes, and it's online. If you hit me up, I'll just send you the link, and then you can get started. But the point is, even if you don't have that, take time out and sit and be with yourself uninterrupted every day for a certain amount of time, at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes is even better. Okay, number one. Number two, take some time and do some reflection on where you're going, what's happening, what's the challenge in front of you, and how you're going to solve it. Number three, if you're having trouble doing that, or maybe you just should for a while, sit down at the end of the day and do an inventory of how you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. And I always say, just draw a line down. And this is on the left side, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. On the right side, this is what I'm doing about it or not. So that it's very explicit. It's like right there in front of you. This is a very simple homework exercise you can do. All right, that's the first one. Number two, disciplines, 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 disciplines. Starting with, we can't afford, I had to learn this myself the hard way. We cannot afford to just eat anything just because we like it. That time has been past. Everybody knows that we got super problems with physical health in the Black community. Most of it is attributed to bad diet right off the bat. So start cleaning up your diet. Stop eating fast food. Stop eating trash. Stop eating sweets all the time. Stop drinking sodas. You shouldn't be drinking any soda at all. You should be running from anything with corn syrup in it. Just find out, how can I eat good, healthy food that I like. I'm not talking about starving, and I'm not talking about not enjoying food. I'm saying find out how to enjoy food that's going to keep you alive. Physical discipline. That's the first part of physical discipline. Feed your body right. Second, find out something you like to do where you can use at least 3 times a week, maybe, where you can get your blood pumping a little bit, whether it's walking, whether it's playing basketball, whether it's riding a bicycle, swimming, whatever. Find something to do so that you can be physically active. Number 3, associates. Hang out with people that want to be winners. Hang out with people that have a discussion going on about the problems that we are trying to solve as a people and in their personal lives. Hang out with people that have skills and want to share skills. Hang out with people that are going to encourage you to be better, to be stronger, to be smarter, to be wiser. Hang out with those people. Drop out all the people that want to gossip, want to talk about Will and Jada and all that. They ain't got a damn thing to do with your life.
You know what? You wait a minute.
Nothing to do with your personal life and your progress. Quit spending your time being preoccupied with other people's bullshit and handle your own bullshit. Get people that will help you. Get people. Hey, look, stop. I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about me and you. Okay, now we're on to something. All right, number 4, invest in yourself. Personal investment. Find out, like he said, become smarter about something. Pursue it. If you're thinking about, maybe I should think about doing this type of business. Okay, spend your time going and finding out about that business, finding out about how could I do that, finding out about tools, whatever it takes. Find out about it. Invest in that. Go to different things. Like we do retreats all the time. Go to retreats so that you can focus for a few days on yourself, on your progress. Start to redefine yourself, redefine your world, and redefine your actions. Invest in yourself. Number 5, if you need therapy, go to psychological therapy. I'm a therapist. A lot of people come to see me. Mostly when people come to see me, mostly they're just normal, everyday people that are stuck somewhere because of some type of trauma that they're living with. And they haven't noticed how to, because you wouldn't come see me if you could break out yourself. So normally, most of the people that I see are just normal, everyday people that are stuck right now. And what I do is help them get unstuck. And so go get that therapy. I started out, like I said, I was a drug addict. I got therapy. That's how I overcame being a drug addict. That's what made me interested in psychology. So I definitely am a big promoter of therapy. All right. And then finally, getting to what he was saying about being knowledgeable about us as a people. There was a great psychologist that one of my mentors, his name is Amos Wilson. You can find him online on YouTube. He's passed on now, but his words will live forever. And he was the one that broke down some very simple understanding about something he called false consciousness and social amnesia. False consciousness and social amnesia. False consciousness is what they have us in, believing things that actually are not true and not understanding or having a knowledge of what is true. So now you got to be about the business of seeking the truth, period. That just got to be a lifestyle. And that means you got to do some study, means you got to do some reading. You got to do some reading of stuff maybe that you weren't that interested in, whatever. But history of Black people and the culture of Black people is the history of the world. And if you're expecting that the world is going to give you that information, you're going to remain in the dark and have false consciousness. Social amnesia was what he was explaining about how the system keeps us reacting to events as if something recently just happened that should get our attention, when in fact we forget that really we're dealing with a process, not an event. And the process is, at some point, we were invaded, bust upside the head, made to have amnesia about our own world, and now our whole activity is all about recovering our damn memory and our place in life. And when he said the king, right? Like, we sometimes throw that around loosely, but I'm really talking about taking that thing on for real. Malcolm X, the Shining Prince King, made a statement that made me straighten my bone up and think twice about myself. And it really affected me. And Malcolm said, "No, I'm the man you dream you are." And when he said that, I kind of shook, like, damn, am I that confident? I had to come into that throne and say, no, I am the man that you dream, the man you dream to be, I'm him. I'm it. When I say this is what men got to do, Black men got to stand up and reclaim their throne as the original man on planet Earth. And people be talking to me about should I go back to Africa? And I'm like, look, the Earth is my planet. I was here. 400,000 years later, I'm still here. So when I talk about my throne, I'm talking about the Earth. Okay. I'm a keeper of the Earth. I'm a keeper of the human beings who inhabit the Earth. I'm a protector of the children of the Earth. I'm a protector of the Earth itself. As a man, I have to make that as much of a priority, because in the end, it's all interconnected.
Nice. So they wanted to know what book. I think you were just speaking about Amos Wilson in general.
Okay, for Amos Wilson, the book I recommend is The Falsification of African Consciousness.
Okay.
The Falsification of African Consciousness by Amos Wilson. The other book I mentioned at the beginning was The Body Knows the Score by Vander Kolk. Okay. K-O-L-K, I think it is. Vander Kolk.
So Ramira asked the question earlier, what are some really good reads that talk on healing the Black identity?
There's a lot.
And if you want, you could get back, if you want to think about it and then get back to us, that's fine.
Yeah, there are a lot of angles, right? Okay. Yeah. I have a list of about 200 books I recommend because healing the Black identity, and I think, again, because we have been put in a certain state of mind about even identity, right? Through the school system that erased our identity, that even the definition of identity is false, right? So that when I say identity, we start thinking about some very specific arenas and not realizing the broadness of identity. Like, I just redefined myself a minute ago as king of the earth. That's my identity. Right? And I know that I'm a Black human being, and who are Black human being? That's an identity. And it's not because you have Black skin, but what does it mean to be a Black human being? That's something that Black people have not answered for themselves. Right? See, if you're in a hostile environment, why are you the enemy? Right? What is this guy's problem with you? We don't answer that question, because it would shake us to the core, and it would force us to stand up, straighten our backbone up, and to assume our rightful place on the stage of history, which is we are the original humans. And that might scare people, but that's a part of my identity. Oh, I'm the original. I'm not a prototype. I mean, I'm not a copy. I'm the original. I am the prototype.
Well,
right? That's a part of my identity, you see? So we have to do a bit of reading, not just one type of reading.
Okay.
The Destruction of African Civilization
Mm-hmm.
by Chancellor Williams is one of the most important books I think anybody can read. The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. That's one must-read book.
All right, I'm putting it in the comments now.
All right? People have heard about, but they need to read Carter G. Woodson's book. What is the name? What's the title of that book? Yeah, thank you. Carter G. Woodson's book, the Miseducation of the Negro.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important book. It's just as relevant right now as it was in 1907 or 6 or 5 or whenever it was written. Those are books that can be read that I think are easy to read. I mentioned Falsification. They're easy to read. There are some other books that may be a little more technical. All the books by Cheikh Anta Diop,
Mm-hmm.
especially his book, Civilization or Barbarism, and Authentic Anthropology. That's a tough read. It's technical, but it's one of the most powerful books you're ever going to read.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to get more into Black writers and the things that they're thinking about. A lot of people have been talking about James Baldwin again. James Baldwin is one of my favorite authors, one of the most crystal clear commentators on the Black experience. Right now is the time to read The Fire Next Time.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah.
Right. So folks are they're saying they want the reading list.
Okay.
We can go on forever about reading this.
Yeah, I got at least 200 right off the bat.
You can go Water in the Spirit, you know what I'm saying? You can go Isis Papers. There's so many different books.
Isis Papers, absolutely. Francis Cress Welsing. That's another one. Must read.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Okay. Well, we'll get that.
You
will look up, later, post show. Yeah. All right. So we this has been good. This I'm full. A lot to look. I got a whole page of notes here. Okay. Yeah. Whole page of notes. So this has been good. I think the viewers have enjoyed it. So where can folks find you? What you have going on? How can folks connect? Let us know.
Sure. So I have I'm moving more in an online context right now because of what we got going on in the world. Mm-hmm. So I usually have online classes. I have an Awakening Divine Masculine class going, Awakening Divine Feminine class going. I have a shadow work class coming up. Also have a matchmaking event coming up. Speaking to that for finding elevated connection, right? So you got to apply, and we screen to only find the most elevated people because we're trying to create these, strong unions. I also have a burial coming up, and then we're doing a mountain retreat in Sedona, right? In Sedona in September. So honoryoga.com is my website. What'd you say?
I might not know where Sedona is. You said Sedona.
Fair enough. Sedona, Arizona. Right? So that's Arizona. It's a really magical sort of vortex out there. And we choose to do this particular third eye retreat out there to access that energy. And so my website is honorsyoga.com. You can go there. You'll see all of my classes, retreats, events, and all that stuff. And usually, when stuff is a little bit more clear, me and Bob are working together, right? So you might find us doing a burial together or doing retreats together. We work together all the time. So,
yeah. All right.
You can find me on Facebook, of course, just by my name. That is Dana Dennard. That name. You can find me on there, and also I have a YouTube channel, which is Akhet World, 2 A's, KHET World, Akhet World, and some of the things that we've been talking about, you'll hear me talking about them, and also see some examples of some of the stuff that we do, some of these retreat activities that we do. Right now, I am the main thing I want to put out, I guess, right now is that I have a online class that I've been doing. We do it in 8-week cycles. I think I've got 2 more weeks before we start back. But this one is specifically for helping people to lose weight and to get in a lifestyle that will help them to stay uh, into a healthy weight and also a way of just approaching their lives. So I call it the progressive weight loss workshop because we do focus a lot on food and food preparation, and I can show you, again, how you can learn how to eat really, really well and also really enjoy it and lose weight. Last group I just did, we had weight loss anywhere from 8 to about, I think 20, no, about 30 pounds in 8 weeks. So
Oh,
these people got real dedicated, real serious now. So if I tell everybody, if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to lose your weight. And we know that, for us as a people, we're talking about the pre-existing conditions for COVID. Number one pre-existing condition for COVID is actually, I say, the mind first, how you're approaching your life, where your immunity starts. And then the next one is obesity they say is the number one condition that uh, pre-exposes you to problems with it. But that's true for almost all these other biological problems that we have. We have 60% of us are overweight. We have a super high degree of diabetes, especially type 2. Diabetes type 2 is caused by the way you've been eating, and you can also reverse it and get away from it by changing what you eat. So that's going to start in about 2 weeks. You can contact me personally either through my Facebook page or even my email is my name at Gmail. So it's that simple. Just one word, Dana Dennard at Gmail. Also, I'm teaching. I do a workshop on dream analysis. I created a way to understand dreams, and we have an ongoing dream class. And then also, I teach yoga and meditation. And on Sunday night, I have an ongoing class for that goes forever. They had me in there till the next day.
I'm gonna jump in there, man.
What's that?
I gotta jump in there one time.
Yeah, man, you've been missing it. We've been having a good time.
yeah.
I got my own classes, but I'm gonna jump in
Yeah,
there
I
anyway.
know. I know. So in that class, and it's not, people say yoga, and just let me say that, I started as a young man. I was initiated by a true yoga master. And so when I say yoga, I'm not talking about just exercise, 1 hour exercise to get roughed up a minute and then you're out of there. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about lifestyle. How can you, yoga as a way of life, how can you do things for yourself? Again, activity that you can engage in to make sure that you're living. And Jay brought up the point of, in spite of all the trauma and the stuff we've been through, we still must learn to get joy out of life. And joy should be a way of life for us, not an event that happens every once in a while. It should be the way of life. And
True.
we can learn, even in the middle of all this foolishness, we can learn to live a joyous life. But it requires a certain discipline, and that's what I teach.
Okay. Very good. Wow. All right. So we have gotten an earful on Black men healing from systemic and interpersonal trauma. Folks can catch this on the replay right here on Facebook, but also on the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel. So
Yay!
I have to
Thank you
invite
for having us.
you to subscribe.
Nicole, you're fabulous, Nicole.
Well, thank you.
Fabulous. I remember when all this started.
Yes, you were. Look, Nefertari will forever and always be the home
Yeah,
of Conversations with Nicole, the
I
birthplace
remember.
of CWN. So I
I
give
seen it
thanks.
coming. I
I know
seen
you
it coming.
did. I know you did. You tell me every time you see me too.
Yep.
So I appreciate
Beautiful.
it. I appreciate it. It was my great pleasure to have you both on tonight. Continue just glowing and growing and doing the wonderful work that you're doing. And we'll have to do this again soon.
Sure.
Thank you for the invite and
Yeah.
respect. And I
Yeah.
respect my student here. Just
Absolutely.
listening to him, of course, I'm sitting back here glowing like, yeah, they'll be all right after I leave. That's what I worry about as an old man now. After I leave, y'all will be all right because I got them coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm right there.
You have a
Yes,
great
it's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you, Nicole, for allowing me to be here. And this is actually the first time that I've done something like this with Baba. So even this for me is
Yeah.
amazing.
Look, we're the first. I love it.
I'm not the first for you, Nicole.
Yes, more to come. More to come for sure. For sure. For sure.
Great
So,
work.
yes.
Keep up the great work.
The audience too for being tuned in.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you, all of you all that are out there listening and asking questions and rooting. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Be the light.
The comments are rolling in. They're saying how great it was. Thank you. Thank you. They appreciate it. So this was great. This is great. Even my own child was on here
Look at
tonight.
him. Jay, what's up, man? What's up?
Yes, all the way from Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn.
So,
love it.
Appreciate it. All right. So I put contact in there for Jay and Dr. D. Y'all can check them out on those various platforms. And again, this will be out, the replay of this on Facebook as well as on the YouTube channel. So be sure to tell people about what we have going on here. All month for July is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So we are talking to Black and Brown clinicians, therapists, folks that are trying to help Black and Brown folks survive in America, thrive, and move from surviving to thriving in America.
That's right. Thrival.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. So this was awesome. This was absolutely awesome. So again, appreciate y'all. And we're gonna sign off. We'll see y'all next time.
Don't forget now, Jay, I like that shirt, man. I like that shirt.
All right, I'm gonna get you one.
All right.